Well, that was quick. I want to start with a story. I'm going to start telling a story, and as I go through these pieces of the story, I want you to raise your hand if you recognize the story. So the first story starts in a kind of an ancient world. It's populated by not only humans, but elves and dwarves. There's a giant battle between good and evil. No one's got it yet, really? There's a ring. It's very powerful. So you guys know I'm talking about Wagner's Ring Cycle, right? The opera. Oh, also Lord of the Rings. Another story. This one is about a young boy in London. Wow. Just raise your hand when you've got it. He meets some wizards who tell him that he is magical. He receives an owl. He is told that there is a world operating right beside the real world, full of magic, and that he is destined to be one of the most powerful magicians in the history of the world. So that is the comic book Tim Hunter by Neil Gaiman that came out 2 or 3 years before that other one. The reason I tell you that is that stories just keep getting repeated. For thousands of years, we have the same stories over and over. And certainly there are stories like Tim Hunter and Harry Potter that are almost the same story. But there's a pattern that is more broad than that covers every story. If you think about every hero story that's ever written, from 2,000 years ago to this weekend at the movies, they all follow the same basic pattern. And it's called the hero's journey. About 40 years ago, a man named Joseph Campbell wrote a book that described this hero's journey. And he described a series of steps that every hero goes through. Every hero, from myth, as I said, from fiction now, from fiction 1,000 years ago. And this hero's journey covers all of them. You can map it on. He used to challenge his students at university to find a story that didn't fit this pattern. He had a pretty big ego about that. I'm going to tell you this today because a number of the speakers are going to be mentioning the hero's journey. They're going to be diving into it, but I wanted to give you an overview to start with. I'm going to use a couple of examples. Obviously, some of you recognize this guy, and we'll use this girl as well. 2 stories from decades apart, but they follow the same steps. Now, Joseph Campbell had 40-ish, 50-ish steps. I am not going to go through all of those today because I would put you to sleep, and that is a very bad way to start a conference. But I've broken it down into 5, and you'll see over the next couple of days that some people have 12, some have 10, some have 20, and it depends what you're trying to use it for. But for an overview, 5's a good start. So the first step's called the mundane world. Now, mundane is just another word for boring, normal, typical. This is where the hero starts the story. And so in Harry's story, he lives in a house that looks like everyone else's house. He lives in London. He goes to school. He lives under a staircase. He lives with a horrible aunt and uncle and an even more horrible cousin. And that's his life. He really doesn't like it. And that's very common with heroes as well. They don't like where they are when they start the story. Similarly, Dorothy starts living on a farm, the only kid around in Kansas, which is not very exciting. Man, there's 2 people from Kansas here. And even worse, she lives in black and white, which is really boring. So this is where the heroes start. And you can already imagine, you start thinking about your favorite stories. The hero starts off somewhere boring that they don't want to be. It's not the place for them. And then they get a call to adventure. Something that tells them, something or someone that tells them that there's something else out there, that they don't have to be stuck in the mundane world for the rest of their lives. So for Harry, he gets a letter, a literal call that says, there is another world for you, come and join us. Doesn't get much more call to adventure than that. And I think J.K. Rowling was probably writing the story from Joseph Campbell's book as she wrote it. It's that aligned. But it can come in lots of forms. So for Dorothy, it's a tornado that disrupts everything, takes her from her normal world and off into another world. That's her call to adventure. It could be getting bitten by a radioactive spider. It could be any number of things, but something that changes things. Then the hero has to cross the threshold. Now, a threshold's just an entryway, a doorway, a gateway. So they're leaving that old world and going into the new world. And sometimes there's a challenge there. Sometimes the hero has to overcome something, get past someone. There's a test. So Harry, he goes to platform 9 3/4, has to run through a wall, which is a bit of a test. It's very easy, very simple. Again, I think J.K. Rowling knew what she was doing. Maybe even more so in The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy, when she walks out the door, her world becomes color. People making this movie really got it. Leave the old boring black and white world behind, enter into a colorful world of adventure and newness and excitingness and short people. So that's crossing the threshold. You remember Spider-Man famously becomes Spider-Man, really owns Spider-Man when his uncle is killed. And that's a lesson for him. He learns that, or remembers, that with great power comes great responsibility. That's when he really became the hero and started the journey. So then the next step is the biggest one, the longest one. If you were watching a movie, it'd be an hour of the movie. It's 3/4 of the book, and it's the path of trials. And this is where the hero encounters new people, learns new things, and overcomes challenges. So in Harry, he meets some friends right away, meets an enemy pretty early on as well. And mentors are a very important part of the hero's journey. So he gets a couple of those as well. And while he's at Hogwarts, he's learning. He's learning hard skills like how to not fall off a broom, but also how to get along with new people, how to fit in, how to get away from bullying or deal with bullying. All of these things are part of the path of trials, including having to fight a troll in the girls' bathroom. All of those things are testing him as he goes. And again, with Wizard of Oz, they went very literal with this. And for a path of trials, they made a bright yellow path. It said, here's the path of trials, go along it, and you're going to meet an enemy, and you're going to meet friends. That's the path of trials. So then at the end of the path of trials is the final step, the final phase, and that is the master of two worlds. So the hero has become something different. They've changed. Because of all of the things that they went through in the path of trials, they're now a new person. So at the end, when Harry gets on a train to go back to exactly where he came from, goes back to that same world, the old world, he has changed. He is fundamentally a different Harry. And because he's different, the world around him starts changing. And every hero after their journey comes back with some knowledge, some boon that they share with the world. And so Harry goes back and things are not the same. He doesn't live under the staircase anymore. He doesn't put up with the treatment of his aunt, uncle, and cousin. He's much more confident. He's ready to be a hero. He's ready to change things. And Dorothy goes back to the same place as well, that same old world, but things have changed. She's changed. She's recognized the importance of family, the importance of those connections, the importance of home. And so she's a fundamentally different person. Now, this is great if you're doing an English literature test or something like that, but to get it practical, I want you to think of yourself as the hero of the story. So imagine an invisible person is following you around with a giant book and they're writing down everything that you do. Apart from being incredibly creepy, that is a story of which you are the hero. You are the main character. And so just like every other hero, you go through those same steps. And the thing about this is that the hero's journey is a cycle. It begins again. So you start high school in 9th grade. It's a scary place. You're in middle school, you're at the top, you think, I know everything, and you get dumped into this enormous place with all these other scary 12th graders. And you have to overcome that. You go through challenges. and you come out of it as a different person, but then you start another journey. And it might be going to college, it might be starting a business, getting a job, traveling the world, joining the circus. Any of those things have the same steps again and again. And hopefully you're thinking right now, yeah, well, when I started that job, or right now I've just started a new job, and I had to cross the threshold and get into this new place, and now I'm meeting these new people. I'm having to learn how things work in this new world. All of that is changing you. So I want you to put yourself in the spotlight and start thinking about how this applies to you. And importantly, Campbell said that we don't have to go on this journey alone, because the heroes of all time have gone before us. And man, it's easy to feel alone when you're going through these challenges, right? You feel like you're the only person who's ever experienced this. But the hero's journey tells you that everyone has. Not only these fictional heroes, but the people around you. The people sitting next to you right now are on a hero's journey. They might be in the path of trials right in the middle. They might be in a mundane world waiting for something, waiting for the call to adventure. They're just bored. They don't know what to do, and then something is going to happen that takes them into another world and through all of those steps. So one piece of advice for you is to create your own hero round table where you populate a table of advisors like King Arthur did. He had knights, he had Guinevere, he had Merlin to help him through his hero's journey because he didn't know how to be king of England, so he got advice from others. So imagine creating your own fictional round table. Who would you put there? Who would be the people that could give you the best advice? And pick people from your life as well. Like at my round table, I have Indiana Jones sitting next to my mum, and they always give me different advice. My mum is risk averse. Indiana Jones is telling me, just do it. So I want to finish with an idea from Happy Feet. At the end of this movie, or towards the end of the movie, towards the end of the Path of Trials, Mumble jumps off at this huge ice cliff and starts chasing some ships to follow and find out what's going on with the world and save the world, right? And his mentor at the top of the cliff yells out, "Mumble, Happy Feet, I'm going to be telling you a story long after you're gone." And I think for me, that's what a hero is. It's someone whose story we keep telling. So my question to you is, what are you going to do with your story? How are you going to write your story so that people are telling it long after you're gone? Thank you very much.
The Hero Roundtables are the global events that ask the question, what is a hero? You've just seen one hero talk. To find more and join the conversation, visit our website or social media.